It is my great pleasure now to introduce our next speaker for the day, Chris Menz. Chris leads the state government's property group, Renewal SA, to drive investment and growth through property and projects. His passion and experience for the property industry spans over 20 years, with roles across consultancy, private development sector and government. Please join me in welcoming Chris Menz to the stage.
Good afternoon, actually, everyone. Thanks so much for the invitation. Hands up if you think housing in the regions was an issue before COVID. Great. It's great not to have a COVID conversation about housing because, frankly, there were issues and fault lines in the housing industry before COVID came along. We've seen exacerbation of it, and one of the biggest issues we've seen, actually, is defining the issue. I'm not going to seek to define the issue because every time we have a conversation about this, it turns into a giant sort of bird's nest of all the different factors and contributors to the housing market, whether it's debt, supply, demand, cost, and you'll hear a bit from panellists about some of those touch points, no doubt. My name is Chris. I'm the Chief Executive at Renewal SA. We're the property group that is owned by the state government. We operate or seek to operate commercially. Much to everyone's surprise, we don't always operate profitably. In fact, I think it happens about once every 4 years or so. So we are focused on social and community outcomes. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about some regional issues we've seen with a couple of examples, just to highlight the vast array of issues that we're seeing out there. And specifically a focus on affordable housing, the different levers and different ways in which impact can occur. We'll talk about one particular model or case study as well, and a little bit of a few tips on a way forward from what we've seen over the last 12 months and our involvement around the regions. Sorry, I'll have to get out from behind here. We're passionate property people at Renewal SA. We believe you can have an impact on people's lives through property, and that's what we do. We have a whole bunch of things that we do, including anything from innovation districts, industrial, residential. A lot of our work is partnered. As well, we have a significant land bank, but more importantly, we have access to the government's land bank or balance sheet, which includes regions and includes Crown lands, of which there is significant in the regions, goes to the opportunity before us. The areas that we focus at Renewal SA, and these are areas that have been endorsed formally, if you like, for our organisation, are up behind me. You notice the last one, which I think is 7, is regions. It's sort of, we've done more talk than any action in regions, to be fair. And it's about 12 months ago that this actually found its way into our priorities. And we put it up there and then we took it down, and then our board of management put it back there again, and we debated it at our recent first board meeting. And Anne Moroney is here today, who's on the panel as one of our board members. Regions is staying very much firmly on there. And we will continue to look for opportunity, but the way that we seek to resolve issues around housing is to do projects rather than look at policy or broad government-wide initiatives. So for us, it's really about what projects, what supply can be generated to assist to solve specific issues in each area. We have a whole range of projects. I am going to provide this presentation to you as well, so everything in it is capable of sending around, so you can have a look about us if you're interested in some of our projects. Behind me, I've put a couple of key towns, regions, cities across South Australia, and some of the specific issues that we've found through our investigations, particularly over the last 6 months. As you know, the current government is particularly keen on not just investing, but also spending time and understanding the regions further so that they can be prioritised. So what's called Country Cabinet has occurred in the southeast, and we undertook a tour to look through all the issues around housing in particular, and there's one occurring from tomorrow, obviously, which many of you will be aware of in our Port Pirie, Port Augusta. Now, I'm going to focus on 2 in particular behind me, and you may not be able to see for the chair, so I'll read them out. One is Tatiara, and the other one is Whyalla, 2 very distinct areas with very specific issues. In Tatiara, one of the big issues, and with over 100 job vacancies currently in the area and businesses seeking to expand, is actually just plain old provision of housing. The land economics don't stack. If you want to build a new block, it's going to cost you, you're going to be behind or make a loss of about $50,000 per block just to build the land. That's before and if you can attract a builder to the area to actually build, let alone the cost impost of getting people, materials, etc., to that area. Health, education, private industry, all need workers in that area, but it's a tough ask. There is also a call for public housing there, however, less of a call in Tatiara. So, funnily enough, it's not necessarily an express issue that we've understood, at least. It is under the remit of South Australian Housing Association or Trust. One of the big issues there is that there is business support. There is private sector saying, how can we help? How can we contribute towards this? And we're sort of putting our hands in the air going, so you've got those willing to put capital or money or some form of arbitrage towards a project. You've got a council who are very organised and understand their issues and exactly what they need. Something like 10 or 20 homes in a place like Tatiara would completely change the dynamic. It would get health workers there, a couple of extra teachers, some people at the council and some for private industry. And then you can start to get solutions. So I encourage you not to think too big in this. We're talking 10 or 20 houses for a place like Tatiara, you will have a big impact. Whyalla, however, does have provision. There are not many developers or builders up there. I think there's 2 in Whyalla. But what Whyalla has a future planning issue. It may be some of the topics come up in your panel next, but with a proposed hydrogen hub at Port Bonython and additional expansion into the north of other key industries, what you'll see and what's planned is an increase in workers. Now, are they short-term? Are they long-term? How can places like Whyalla benefit from that future growth? How do you plan for it? How do you accommodate it? How do you fund it? So looking now so that you're not stuck behind the 8 ball when it actually happens and comes is a critical issue. You can see how different those two are. 10 or 20 over here. How do we plan for the next 5 years over here? And that's just 2. I'm going to change speed and talk a little bit about affordable housing now. And at Renewal SA, we view that there's 5 ways, particularly through government, that affordable housing can be facilitated. There's a summary of those 5 behind me, and then after these slides, there's a breakdown of those which I'm not going to go through, but I've provided so that you can have a look in your own time. First way is that we mandate it. We just say you have to do it. Anything over 20, you've got to have 15% affordable housing. Someone like me who's worked for many, many years in the private sector, there is a way to manage that so that you can meet the government requirement of 15% and not actually deliver affordable housing. It's not because there's no good intention to do it, but the system that is around it on the private sector side, as well as the government side, is complex. Now, South Australia is one of the only places that actually has any sort of formalised legislation around this, which is fantastic in my view. Even on the private sector side, I think it is too. But how do you force it to actually happen? When the government's involved, we can require that to occur. So if the government owns a parcel of land and puts it out, in addition to the legislation, we can actually require as a landowner to say, every time you develop here, we want to see that it goes to the right buyer or the right renter and it's at the right price. There's a range of other incentive schemes. The majority of these have come from federal government or through Commonwealth grants, Housing Affordability Fund, NRAS, cheap debt effectively through what's called NIFIC. There's a range of things that can happen, and we know with recent announcements at a Commonwealth level that there is more planned. We're not sure how that's going to land yet. Existing affordable rental stock, we've got the Housing Trust, community housing providers that rent at 25% discount to market, or around about that number. We like to call that key worker. Everyone thinks it's a really attractive term because it conjures up images of young, fresh teachers and policemen and fireys and all the sort of good-looking types, and they're working and they contribute towards society. But in reality, it's those that are just earning a median salary and it's just too tight a market to get in, and they need the ability to get in. It's not public housing or social housing in that sense, and it's not full market housing. It's provided at that discount. We really like this, by the way. Undertaking direct development, that's where government or other agencies or groups can get in and say, we're just going to build it ourselves and we'll either subsidise it, cross-subsidise, or build up a feasibility that enables the discount. And then there's a range of structured deals, underwrites, shared equity, products through Home Start that have been announced over successive governments. Really fantastic products, to be honest, that need to get a greater market share. I did hear yesterday from the CEO of Home Start that over 25% of their book is actually placed within the regions of South Australia. So what an incredible opportunity. And they are seeking for different ways to be able to increase that, to make it easy to get finance, given the really significant equity required in some regional areas to even buy a house, needing up to 40 or even 50% equity to buy a median house in some of the regions. Just incredible, really, when you think about how long it takes to save a deposit. So a lot of this information is here, and it talks about how those occur and what's within them, and I'll let you peruse that in your own time. I'm going to go quickly to an underwrite model of de-risking, something we call Nightingale Bowden. It's undertaken through a not-for-profit developer out of Melbourne that we attracted to South Australia. I know often commentary around interstate developers doesn't always go down particularly well. Our view is it's all about the outcome for South Australians. And if we want to have impact in their lives, wherever the money is coming from, we want it here in our states being spent. And that's what happened here. So the government intervened, and to attract, created what we call an underwrite, which meant that if the homes couldn't sell, then the government would step in and buy them and rent them in an affordable manner at discount to market. Guess what? When homes are actually cheap to buy in great locations and well designed, they sell really quickly, and these sold in one day. So really, government de-risks it to enable funding to occur. The project can then happen and proceed, and 50% of the building is now affordable rental. The other 50% of it is affordable purchase. So you can see the kind of community that gets created around that. It's about 32 homes, I think, 36, which sits below funding covenant requirements on medium density, which means that you don't need to do necessarily 120% of your costs to be covered in sales. It's about 100%, which means to get debt is just a lot easier. And these are the types of things that the market is facing when they're saying, how do we get into the regions? Well, how do we get debt? How do we cover our costs, let alone to make a margin? It's a really great building. I actually really love it. And it's about to be finished. It is a carbon neutral operating building. It's about 2.5k from the city. But the question, and the reason I put it up as an example, is really to raise that question, which I know you may explore in a moment with the panel, around density in some of the regional towns and cities. It's getting harder and harder to both find good land that can be used, that shouldn't be used for primary industries, and then also that land near services, and also the types of housing for the people who need it. Are we talking about families coming to regions? Are those that are migrating here families of 4 or 5, or are they singles and couples? And if so, do they need a 600 or 1,000 square metre block? Because all of that is adding costs. It's a massive challenge for communities to understand what density looks like. I'm not proposing 6 stories in the heart of Tatiara, but maybe 2, maybe 3. But these are reforming issues for regional communities and do need to be considered. In terms of a way forward, just in closing here today, defining your specific issue to your area, region or town is just, you can't underestimate how important that is. To say there is a regional issue in housing is simply not enough. We really need to define by each town, by each location, what that means. Is it key workers? Is it seasonal workers? Is it for an infrastructure or building project? Is it government workers? And all of these will create a different solution. Look to those who own land, including the councils. We've been working really productively with some councils who own land and say, what do I do with this? How do I use it to get key workers in here? Places like Robe that are saying, well, we have a seasonal issue and people want to see us as a hub for the surrounding primary industry areas. How can we leverage that more? Look at who can contribute towards it in capital or goodwill, and they include the businesses that benefit from having the workers there. Look to feasibility and funding models, and that's where you may be able to get assistance through RDA and through also state government. My details are up through here as well, and I invite you to get in touch. And then hopefully you can go into delivery. Thanks so much. My details are here and you'll have a copy. Thanks, everyone.